I mean, the people who try to do nasal breathing, what's the biggest mistake that they
So
usually make?
the thing I see over and over again, I've seen this actually from reviewers of scientific papers, I've seen this from athletes, I've seen this from, is they presume that if you suggest that nasal breathing is good, they don't really want to know why or how or that you have to adapt. They just want to go do it, right? So, this has always been true in humans. We're relatively impatient, right? We want the thing to happen immediately for us. We don't necessarily want to have to understand much. We just want to do it, right? It's what we're talking about, instant
gratification.
Instant gratification, right? And that's getting worse, I think, and that's an old man view. That just describe that to me being a boomer and say, hey, boomer, who cares? But it is a problem, right? In my estimation. So what happens over and over again is you'll try to explain it to them, but they're not really getting that. They're just saying, okay, nasal breathing, good, I'm going to go try it. And then they go out and try to run the same way that they always run, right? But initially, you haven't adapted to breathing this way because you've been breathing orally. So, of course, you're not ready to produce enough ventilation breathing nasally. You feel air hunger. You mentioned yourself, this is really hard for me. Well, all that says to me is you need to go slower, not that it's hard. You just have to find the right pace. But people don't want to do that, right? They want to get there. So they go out and try to run as fast as they can. They feel horrible air hunger. Now, if I was to tell you probably the scariest thing in the world, I'm guessing that one of the categories that would scare you more than anything else, because this is being a human being, is if I held you underwater. Because at some point you'd start to feel air hunger, and you'd start to realize if he doesn't release me, I'm not going to live, right? I'm going to die relatively quickly. So nothing will scare us more than that idea of losing our ability to sense that we're not getting enough air. So what we're really suggesting people do, or what I'm suggesting people so often do, is in not understanding this and just saying, okay, nasal breathing, I'll try it, they go out and they feel air hunger while they're running. And I did that too, right? When I first started doing this, I remember, it'd start out really slow, and then I'd start moving up to my normal road pace, and I'd be like feeling suffocation, right? And that's not easy to overcome. I mean, a rational human being, I don't necessarily always put myself in that category, can't overcome that, right? They're like, that's idiotic. It's like, are you going to overcome having somebody have control to hold you underwater on a regular basis? Hell no. You're going to say, no, that's insane. So, right away, and again, this is not just the neophyte. This is not just the athlete who wants to get there too quick. This is even scientists, right? I still get this, right? Well, I remember a reviewer said to me once, I tried that. You can't do that. I'm like, did you? Like the first time? Of course not. So how do you overcome that? So the basic idea you have to recognize is that you want to find the level where you begin to have a sense that something's different, but not where it's uncomfortable, right? So the way we suggest doing that is to get on, let's say you're a runner, right, or a CrossFitter. Get on a treadmill and start walking, breathing nasally. Put some water in your mouth or put some tape over just so you're breathing nasally. And then, go at least 2 or 3 minutes at an easy pace, and then just start increasing that in small increments, right? And keep sensing this idea of, do I feel like I'm not getting enough air? When you first get to the stage, not where it's uncomfortable, but where you start to notice something, that's maybe where your training stimulus should be. So it's not unduly uncomfortable, right? And then before you know it, you'll be going faster and faster and faster. We had a woman who ran for us in cross country, and she had what's called EILO, but initially we thought maybe she had EIB, so I was trying to get her to breathe nasally. She was a woman who could run a mile in around 5 minutes. D2, pretty good D2 capability. Like in the RMAX, she would win races, but not at D1. And probably 18, 19 minutes, 5K, kind of like that. So, initially she could hardly run her, warm-up paces, but within like 5 or 6 weeks, because I got her to slow down a lot, she was already to like a 6:30 pace, breathing nasally. Now, it turned out she had this other form of EIB, which has to be dealt with differently, and finally that got figured out, and so she went that route. So we didn't continue with the nasal breathing thing. But she was able to adapt pretty successfully fairly quickly. But it's still not a thing that happens overnight, right? We're talking, even if you did it well, we're still talking probably months if you wanted to get to the point of being able to do really high-level work breathing nasally. And then doing it intelligently, right? Figuring out what the right level is for now, and also how to intervalize the level that you want to get to. So let's say we had you on the treadmill and you got to like a 9-minute pace, 9 minute per mile pace, and you were, starting to feel a little discomfort. then what we might do is have you mostly run just a little slower than that or right around that pace, but we might also throw in some intervals at like an 8:45 pace where you go for like 2 minutes, right? And before you know it, those would get easier. And so we keep advancing you. It's really just the same way that we advance your fitness because it's really the same thing, right? We're talking about training skeletal muscles and improving your ability to oxygenate, right? The same thing that we're generally doing.
Yeah, it's the idea of just you're training to adapt, right? You're not training to destroy your body thinking, oh, I'm going to have to be like at the red line all the time.
Exactly. Well, let's just say we were talking about training your bench press, right? If I train you in failure sets every day, you know what happens. You fall apart, right? I don't know where you are on failure sets, but we could talk about that. So I don't do that, right? I know how often to give you that stimulus. And I try not to increase the stimulus. If I really understand training, I try not to increase stimulus until it's apparent you've adapted. It's gotten easier. I can hit another rep without that fatigue, right? Then it's time to maybe progress the stimulus, right? So all we're talking about when we talk about adapting to breathing nasally is another exercise adaptation. You just do the same thing. You apply the same principles, right? You're adapting your respiratory muscles to be able to do this work of breathing nasally, and they will. But you have to patiently go through that process. So you don't get to be a good CrossFitter in, 15 minutes or even a year. If you listen to what we would say on the elite athlete physiology side, we'd say it's an 8 to 10 year window if you're training intelligently, adaptively, to reach your peak performance. And you probably know that, right? Because when you get those people you got the pictures of, they're probably people who spent 6, 8, 10 years and reached their level, right? Where maybe they're a pro or they're elite age group or something. That doesn't happen in a year. All that happens in a year is a lot of improvement, but you don't get to. So this is the same thing. You have to patiently adapt your ability to breathe this way. It doesn't take 8 to 10 years. I think you could catch up with your skeletal muscles in maybe a year if you, at the outside, it may be as little as 6 or 8 weeks, depending on what your current conditions are around that.